Would love it if you. Good morning, brothers and sisters. I'm happy to be with you this morning. This is a very beautiful, if not a little bit rainy, Sunday, 19 April 2026. And I'd like to share a quotation because this has been on my mind for many years, off and on, of course. But it's from the essays. I have here the complete writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson, 1927 edition. And this is in the early part of his essay on self-reliance. To believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, that is genius. Speak your latent conviction, and it shall be the universal sense. For the innermost in due time becomes the outmost, and our first thought is rendered back to us by the trumpets of the last judgment. Familiar as the voice of the mind is to each, the highest merit we ascribe to Moses, Plato, and Milton is that they set at naught books and traditions, and spoke not what men, but what they thought. A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the luster of the firmament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his thought, because it is his. In every work of genius we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Great works of art have no more affecting lesson for us than this. They teach us to abide by our spontaneous impression with good-humored inflexibility than most when the whole cry of voices is on the other side. Else tomorrow a stranger will say with masterly good sense precisely what we have thought and felt all the time, and we shall be forced to take with shame our own opinion from another. That's the close of a long selection, rather long, I guess, on self-reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I bring this up because there have been many mystics over the centuries, millennia probably, who spoke their minds about the presence of the divine within them and the impressions that they shared with us, some of which endure today after many centuries. And Moses was mentioned, of course, and the Pentateuch of the Bible, very important writings. And some of those offerings are timeless. They linger still because they're so valuable and so present in our societies. So let's see. We have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So those are the first 5 books, and many of us will pay attention to those, and some not. But they're echoed in the present writings of many modern mystics too. So I'm mentioning this essay because I am also fond of the art and writings of William Blake. And he was a very unusual person. In his time, he was not recognized very well at all. He was regarded as somewhat of an eccentric, maybe even a little bit crazy. Too bad for us, because so much of that craziness echoes through us today. We have much more diversity now than we did in Blake's time in England, because now, of course, we have the internet, and one thing happens on the other side of the world, and it's available to everybody in minutes later because of the ubiquitous presence. All of the cell phones have a feature for sharing immediately, and that can be a very good thing, but it also forces us to look in at the credibility of all these offerings. We want to learn how to develop good critical thinking skills. This means looking up the authors, looking up what they have done, what else have they written, where do they appear in the media. In this way, we know how to selectively quote others when we want to. So to William Blake, he's very accessible. You know, he was an engraver, and he had a lot of works on his own. He engraved a lot of his own poetry in his own hand with priceless drawings, and he pioneered the idea of making his drawings, engraving them, and then printing them, and then coloring in by hand with watercolor his drawings, almost like his own personal coloring book, you might say. And he pioneered that in modern times. And one of my favorite illustrations by him, I'm going to hold it up to the camera here. This is showing the divine figure of God, and God is holding a compass toward the earth. And this is called God Geometrizes. God Geometrizes. So that's one of his ideas. And another feature of his writing was that he had his own vocabulary about the divine, planet Earth, certain religious and spiritual figures, and his vocabulary is substantial enough and valuable enough that one can obtain Blake's dictionary, his dictionary of his terms. This is a worthwhile addition to your library if you're a student of mysticism. But you'll find that so much of this, and it's many pages here. What do we have? Bunches and bunches of pages, to use the scholarly reference. But the book helps us to understand who he was and where he was coming from in his writings. And if you're interested, the most famous of his, the most well-known, and they're available in very inexpensive editions by Dover, and The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and Songs of Experience. Song of Experience. And a lot of his writings were in miniature, maybe 5 by 7, something like that. So when you look inward, I'll randomly show a page here. He has his text with his own hand, and he also has his illustrations. So that's a very fine hand he had, and he shared it as widely as he could as an engraver. He helped many authors illustrate their works. Works of Milton, illustrated by Blake, the Book of Job, and other authors. He has, and available to us, very inexpensive editions of his writings. And he's important because he thought enough of his own thoughts to get them out there in the world. And as humans, we have the same access to deep thought. We want to meditate. We want to digest, assimilate, and reflect upon the writings that are available to us all the time. I'm hoping that you keep a journal. And I'll put in a short reference to some kinds of journals that might appeal to you. It might be a daily thing for you. I go into periods where I will make a journal entry daily for a while, and then I'll have a lapse. But if you have an art that you like, or a musical endeavor that you like, put down notes about it. It doesn't have to be complete sentences, and don't cross anything out. There is a philosophy about journaling, the morning pages technique, where every morning you write about 3 pages of your thoughts and let them go. Just enhance your creativity by doing this. 3 morning pages. Also essay fragments, things, ideas that you might want to develop in the future. Get them down on paper for a while. Poetic ideas. Letters to editors. Maybe journal entries associated with groups you might belong to. How about thoughts from your Unity lectures? Or any of the mystery schools. If you're curious about something, write down what you're curious about, because that will come back to you as possibly an effort to amplify your own writings. Somebody's going to be interested in the future. Somebody will be interested. So with Blake, we have his offering of many poetic fragments and the ideas of putting them down. He thought enough of his that he engraved, and his artwork is quite remarkable. He had skill as an artist. He used anatomical drawings, or rather faithfully anatomically drawn figures of humans. He liked nudes. And there were some artists, and one particular artist, who drew undergarments on the figures because he was afraid to publish Blake's writings in full nude because of the prudence of the times. I don't know exactly, I won't speak for that gentleman. But putting underwear on statuary. That would be unheard of in our times. We're a little bit more open-minded and tolerant for that. But I would hate to see David Donatello with underwear, or the Pieta, or other classical works, just because I felt self-conscious about my own anatomy. But we can absorb how Blake felt through his art. And that's an important idea too, because as Emerson reflected upon, we learn from the arts, and all of them, from performing arts as well, but we learn how to see the inside, at least in a limited way, the inside of a person's thinking when they were improvising music or when they were making their notebooks. You can obtain copies of the notebooks of many artists, to include Da Vinci, as well as some important other artists, who put in their notebooks what their thoughts were. And then, of course, we have their finished works, too. But when you see the first extrusions, if you will, of a pencil or a paintbrush, you get to see in brush strokes or pen strokes or pencil markings what was happening in that person's mind when they first started out. So this is a reflection of my own, too, that in imitating art, we can sometimes touch upon our own reflections about ourselves by imitating someone else's art. I'm dabbling in watercolors these days. I'm very interested in the arts of some of the famous watercolors of the 19th century, and to include Winslow Homer and a few others. But I mention this because none of us is limited, and I like encouraging people to let go of the word talent. I don't believe that it's a good word, because sometimes we fall back on that word to say, well, I didn't learn to play the violin because I had no talent. Well, I don't know that, and neither do you. Because when you pick up an instrument, you're going to sound very primitive at first, until you start to make sense of the thing. And it's my favorite discipline is music. Some of you know I play a bunch of them, and sometimes I even make a little money on it. In the past, I have my record of performances. But these days, I let my heart open, and I put forward what I think is going to be worthwhile to listeners. And I'd like to share something with you now. And I have my flute today. And you don't need to get a spectacular flute. This is sort of halfway spectacular. You can get some modest instrument. You can rent one for $20 a month or something. You play it for a while, and you get a sound, and then you start to get more sounds, and then you organize your thoughts into something that appeals to you. To you, not to anyone else, to you. So at this time, I'm going to go within my own self and see what comes out today. So happy Sunday. Here's my improvisation. Then I'll return to my talk. So that's been a little improvisation on the flute. If you ask me to play it again, I won't be able to play it as in the same way because it's gone. It's out there, man. It's out in the cosmos somewhere. And I hope there were listeners somewhere. So getting back to this, the notebooks of the artists are important. The ideas of improvisation are reflected through jazz and through Baroque music and through the Renaissance, and all those classical traditions have their styles of improvisation too. So it's not only a jazzy thing that we can do, it's also a way of embellishing, engrossing, if you will, in the graphic arts, engrossing the creations that we produce. We put them out there and we look for listeners. So if you don't have any talent, first of all, you're full of baloney because you do have talent. It just hasn't been uncovered yet. It hasn't been uncovered yet. And I will mention this, a little off subject, but I think you might appreciate it, that in July, I will be offering 4 free sessions learning about the recorder. And the recorder can be a very virtuosic instrument on its own. But there will be 4 free classes at the Vienna Community Center. And my goal is to encourage the development of a recorder orchestra to put together for performances. So don't worry about talent. We will cover a lot of things for beginners and for experienced players as well. So back to the talk now. So get out a pencil and paper sometime, not now, but take that out, get a subject going in your mind, and then start to put a pencil to paper and see what comes out of the end of that pencil. It might surprise you. You'll be working in the way that Blake did, and possibly the way Emerson did when he was putting down his thoughts for his essays. So I'm going to close now with a thought, reflecting back on the takeaways today. The quotation was from the essay Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he was encouraging us to speak our latent thoughts, to put them down and to voice them. No shame there. What do you think? What do you think? Have you given something a lot of thought? Make sure you share it. Somebody wants to know. And also reflecting on the writings and the art of William Blake, who was a painter, a poet, a very profound poet. His works are fully available to anybody. So Blake and Emerson. So I'll close now with the very sincere and profound thanks to all of you. Thank you for having me back. And I look forward to being with you again.